Hello, I'm Dr. Bond. This is Bond Report. This today is BAFA 23, a modest proposal, and it's in quest of better information at medical meetings. And we'll come to this. I think this is an idea whose time has come. Gertrude Stein said this about Oakland, California: there is no there there. Sometimes people will tell you about something, you're listening to a lecture or something, and you actually know there is no there there. Now, she also wrote, there is the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. That was her good friend for 50 years from the day they met in the Paris Cafe. They were inseparable for all those years, Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein. For those of you dying to know, the B in Alice B. Toklas stands for Babette. A meeting, in this case, H.L. Mencken's talking about a newspaper, but a meeting, a science meeting, is a device for making the ignorant more ignorant and the crazy crazier, as anybody will know. As you go to the meetings, listen to the talks. I myself have heard some plutonium-grade balderdash at meetings, often the labor of the poor Morlock fellows slaving away from Aetychus's minions in the dark satanic mills below. In most cases, it's offset, the toxic value of that balderdash is offset by the chronic inattention, poor paying attention. And as you're shielded, here I am actually getting under my school desk ready for nuclear war in 1962. But you're shielded a little bit by your inattention, poor attention, droning, distraction, poor speakers, bad sound systems. And, cell phones are the sworn enemy of the full effect of that toxic crap. And you're basically getting under the school desk of your inattention as the nuclear war comes, which should probably interfere with recess. I remember thinking of that at the time. It's been widely observed by many workers that there seems to be no reliable method to assess the veracity of speakers, which will tell you the misinformation they present as fact at professional meetings. The older methods, the pants on fire method, the nose growing, numerous faults, cracks, they appear to let a lot of cases through. Even the most flagrant and egregious, they appear to let those cases through. So many investigators feel the need for a more robust approach to the problem of crapola and hooey from the podium. For instance, there's more than you think. Actual fact from, I think, a year ago, they had a cold case in Chicago, and they want to dredge the Chicago River. From the 70s, they're looking for a car that they thought had been put in the Chicago River. And so they dredged the Chicago River looking for that car. They found 97. This is out of the newspaper story. There's more of it than you think. Revolutions, many things, but scientific meetings are always verbose. Trotsky always looks a little uncombed and a little unwashed. The BAFA paradigm, we think, is going to help us. By assholes, for assholes, but the for assholes, the second part of that can be taken in a positive sense. Who are you for today? Are you for these guys, for the benefit of, for the help of? You can't just be against everything, but now you are for the poor passive assholes that are thinking. The BAFA has two elements. But for can mean just for the benefit of the listener. We now find that we can smoke out of the BAFA equations a much more inclusive and universal model that not only helps audiences, but helps speakers, can be described by BAFA. Once again, by assholes, for assholes, if you're buying what the speaker says. Generally speaking, the audience will sit there very passive in the manner of a pancake getting syrup poured over it and just kind of taking that in. You're taking information, however consciously or subconsciously, however undesired, water dripping on your head. While to be regretted, you are part of the BAFA paradigm. And the investigators, me particularly, are to be thanked. It seems highly probable that our new and potent tool of BAFA can demonstrate its power and range and provide the solutions we so desperately seek. Is there nothing it can't do? These guys are producing things in their dark satanic mills, these minions. Those guys even look like young doctors that you see in there. And in terms of this stuff, can you have too much BAFA? You can't, we haven't found it. BAFA is the same with violence and garlic. If it doesn't solve your problem, you're just not using enough of it. This is the BAFA solution. The truth, once it's elucidated, St. Augustine said it, the truth's like a tiger. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose and it'll defend itself. We're talking of the truth. There's somebody's, Elizabeth Taylor had written an autobiography that's actually pretty good, gossip columnist, Hedda Hopper, said, I liked your book, I enjoyed your book, who wrote it for you? To which Liz Taylor said, I'm glad you liked it, who read it to you? Which I think is one of the great all-time anythings. We're going to describe the truth through mathematics, through numbers. Whenever you try to do something with a science, it's got to be in numbers, quantitative. When baseball first put numbers on uniforms, it comes along surprisingly late, and all they did was indicate your position in the batting order. There's Gehrig and Ruth. Babe Ruth batted third. He was number 3. Lou Gehrig was next up. He's number 4. In 1929, the New York Yankees went to assigning permanent numbers to everybody, usually for the duration of their time with the club. They hadn't thought about retiring numbers, things like that. Just an aside, Lou Gehrig dies of Lou Gehrig's disease. So what are the odds? The uniform number became very much a part of the persona of many players. Very much identified with that player. There's old number 3, there's old number, and they would get attached to their numbers. I have no idea how Walter Payton felt about 34, but I don't see the number 34 without Walter Payton occurring to me. The lifetime of the Bears. Now that's especially true, this number identification, where unlike basketball and baseball players, a football player plays his sport in a uniform you can rob a bank in. I mean, there we are. They get attached to them. Burt Reichenbach had Cleveland Browns and the Colts, who would introduce himself as number 44 all of his playing days, and after that would introduce himself and say, hi, I'm 44. Here's an example of a football player wearing his regular uniform you could rob a bank in. That's the son of a bitch right there, Your Honor. I mean, where are you going with that? Now, a standing bet also for regulating speakers at ophthalmology meetings, if the speaker is from Hopkins or Bascom Palmer, if he doesn't say, he or she, in the first 4 sentences of the talk, if he doesn't mention Hopkins, Wilmer, Bascom, Palmer, Miami, I'll give you $10. And the truth, bet's been extended to Bascom Palmer. They wear halos when they speak. There is a typical speaker from Bascom Palmer or Hopkins, the angels that have come to enlighten all of us. And the meeting will also do my standing bet. The meeting will give you $10. They're not expecting to pay out hardly anything. And we're not expecting a lot of takers for our action. But as you hand down the truth, this is how it's done. This is how we'll get up there. Generally speaking, I picture them with halos. Now, telling speaker halos are a questionable thing. You want to remember who you're talking to. As we regulate speakers at ophthalmology meetings, we think it's a good idea to specify the halos will not be supplied by the meeting. Lightsabers are no longer supplied after the incident. Weapons are optional, but subject to, of course, state law. Here we have your various flavors of lightsaber. And since the incident, my client would like to deeply apologize for what may or may not have happened. Visible weapons carried by visitors, but speakers in this case, that was good for troll points, are kindly requested not to carry visible weapons to the podium, as they do influence panels and some judgment, complicate the thinking of panels, and you know who you are. Two-handed guns. This is Major Uziel Gal of the Israeli Defense Force talking about, on his left hand, he's got a Kalashnikov there with a modification so it doesn't have the banana clip, but he's made a newer, shorter one for these concepts with a detachable buttstock on the end, or, you can actually click that back up. It's rotatable, and it made a thing you can get that's, that long. And they started calling this the Uziel and became an Uzi. Well, undeniably interesting. We're not going to have this with our speakers holding two-handed guns up there. The concept, that's the key concept, is the speaker is going to wear a speaking shirt. This is a garment worn by everyone speaking at that meeting, and it'll be specific to that speaker only. There can be some styling. It can be like a baseball jersey. It can be like different styles of baseball jersey. The speaker's garment will consist of a shirt or a top, leaving the speakers to otherwise accessorize, put together with, particularly our ladies, with that style and flair for which ophthalmic speakers are so justly famous. And there will be, of course, a substantial selection of colors and styles, particularly for ladies, but there is one iron requirement. You notice these all have numbers. Can fates or can truth be arrived at through garments? Here is a red shirt. Old-time Star Trek. Dear Mom and Dad, things have been just fine here at Starfleet Academy, but for some reason they issued me a red shirt today, and I'm supposed to go down in the next week or so to a planet with a party with Captain Kirk. Now, we know how that's going to go. You can express a lot of truth with a shirt, red or not, and the regulation size BAFA number on every one of these things that you saw, at least that big, will be worn in the approved manner, front and back, while speaking, and the committee will encourage it to be worn throughout the meeting. And this will be amply supplied. This is speaker number 1. It'll be at least that size. And simply put, speakers are required to wear their number, in this case 5. The number indicates the reliability of whatever information the speaker puts forth. For instance, if you wear a BAFA number 5, this means, and this indicates, that the listener will know that they take whatever you say and divide by 5. That's just the fact. The speaker will take what you say there and divide by 5. These numbers will be worn at all times. The speaker shirts will prominently display the BAFA number no matter what. That would actually be North Melbourne when I was a kid, but they'll assign by the Most High BAFA Committee. Now, decimals are expressed simply by placing the decimal between, if there's 2 numbers on the jersey, 75 here is 7.5, 22 would be 2.2. It's hard to make a statement that's more than 80 or 90% false, because it's hard to say anything without at least 10% truth, without it just gibberish. For instance, here's old number 99. You can't really divide what anyone says in real life by any number over 10 or 12. That's why the decimal point. For instance, how can you compare somebody wearing 79 to somebody wearing 75? What's the difference there? When you get over about 10 or 12, how full of shit can you get? And we believe this BAFA number concept will catch on everywhere. Once it's utility, convenience, here's player G Reaper, number 1, very believable guy, giving us a little smile. We think this concept of the BAFA number, saying how take what you say and divide by that number, we think that'll catch on. We think that'll be big. Once again, Foreign Minister Molotov, very few statements 100% false, however laughably false they are. In this case, when the Soviets are flying over Helsinki dropping bombs, he said they were food packages. The only exception to this is the classic movie Fargo with the classic role of William H. Macy's car salesman, where I think the guy must have done this on a bet, where there's no true sentence, he says in the course, in that entire meeting. So, a new world is dawning. Here are speakers with BAFA numbers at the podium. They're commonly called talking heads, so a lot of the time they do talk through their ass. This is one of these paradoxes you run into with speaking. Revolutions, once again Trotsky, always verbose. And though admittedly, there seems to be no final answer to the question, how full of shit can you get? This can be mathematically proven to be a finite number. For instance, even there, although we all know individuals, you're talking to somebody and you're nodding your head, And your question in your head that you can barely hear over is how full of shit can you get? But the answer to your mathematical question is you can only get so full of shit. And it stops. It stops right around double figures, 10 or 12. Captain America, April 1st is the same as any other day. You can't believe 90% of what you read online, and your friends are still full of shit. There you go. Again, to clarify, a speaker's BAFA number is the number that you take what he or she says and divide by that number. If it's 6, you take that number and divide by 6. No weapons at the podium. There's good and there's not so good. There's a BAFA number in use. There's old number 7 up there. You're taking what they say and dividing. Here's a guy. Now, it's hard to know if 10 is 1.0 or 10. The BAFA committee will have to work that out. BAFA numbers are assigned in the manner of golf handicaps and would fluctuate the same way golf handicaps do. A few good outings, that might make your BAFA number come down. The opposite is true, a few bad outings, and it rises like Pinocchio's nose growing. Just so, the BAFA numbers are assigned by the High BAFA Number Committee, and they take advice like God takes advice. We have an example here of, I guess, an angel giving God a little advice, and he's not sure he wants to hear it. The ingredients of a clandestine, why would speakers say anything that's not the truth? It's the same as if you have the CIA, Henry Crumpton, recruited for the CIA overseas. He said it's the acronym MICE: money, ideology, compromise situation, and ego. This is how you recruit things. This is how you recruit speakers. This is how you recruit spies, from Henry Crumpton, MICE. The ingredients of a clandestine recruitment operation are the MICE. Now, there will be speakers that proudly wear their BAFA numbers throughout the meeting. You know, I'm a truthful guy. Here's my BAFA number, and I've got this and that. The BAFA numbers will be worn proudly, badges of honor, proud decorations, earned in combat, worn proudly. For others, their BAFA number will be more along the lines of Hester Prynne and her scarlet letter on there. Some numbers will choose you, as the range said, but here are the mendacious brothers, Alphonse and Gaston. Number 8, number 9. Can't believe a lot of what they say. Various BAFA hardasses believe the number should be tattooed on you in the manner of Jean Valjean. In some early ones, now the French actually, they do this in the musical comedy. The French actually branded you with a fleur-de-lis, but the chest brand here, or the chest tattoo, was done for the sake of stage, but they actually branded you on the chest or the ear or the arm. By but for, don't be a BAFA enabler. Don't let them do that to you. And the good advice that you get in the books, please, as your older kids will tell you when they're over the age of 8 or 9, please don't be an asshole. Seems simple enough. Now, another BAFA shirt modification, if a speaker does a high proportion of speaking for a certain academic department or institution or company, she will wear that team shirt with their BAFA number prominently displayed, as the your teams are on there here, with the individual BAFA number. Team names will be selected by the individuals involved. There's a lot of freedom. One would expect from particularly speakers from the place I named a high number of bringers of light, uplifters, angels. Creativity is encouraged. There's plenty of room for the prevaricators, feather merchants, fabulists, myth makers, various here suggested dissemblers, perjurers, and the poseurs. They're out there. But here they are, coming up to speak. If they don't win, it's a shame. Wearing the shirts with the prominently displayed BAFA numbers. Here we have one with the BAFA between the poseurs and the shills, wearing their BAFA numbers, a little rhubarb going on. There's been a lot of bad blood, folks, between the poseurs and the shills. No signs of stopping or even letting up. They really don't like each other, do they, Harry? They sure don't, Bob. Well, we're going to use the same good old-fashioned hardball tonight. That'll be with speakers. Suggested logo. We have an S with 2 white canes through it for ophthalmic speakers. Logos are being designed for teams. Here is one for We Are the Alconians. Resistance is futile. Here's the guy in his team jersey, team cap, ready to go. We're going to speak for the Alconians today. Now, many speakers will opt to sell space on their speaking uniforms, like this old boy here, in the manner of race cars. You've got the ads right there on your chest. Why not have that? I would almost call that truth in advertising. I don't see the BAFA number, but you almost don't need it with this guy in the manner of race cars. Colorful. BAFA can be interesting. And I will foresee speakers that will try to bulk up to maximize ad space. More dollars, more speaking, maximize your ad space. I think this is an idea whose time has come. You can see how it works. General Zhukov here, you notice how the BAFA number doesn't show on General Zhukov's uniform, but many of the more cynical listeners would suggest a correlation between a higher BAFA number and the quantity of endorsements on a speaker's jersey. For instance, here we would have some fairly typical speakers, or he might have a panel with him, and they might have a few medals, and here the guys are that do a lot of speaking for that particular line of work, company, device, department. Here they are with their badges of merit. You feel like, anybody have change for $1, you can't resist that. If you have a panel and you ask a question, and your information's question, you do what Thomas Jefferson said the legislature does: dispute everything, concede nothing, and argue by the hour. So here would be a more typical BAFA panel, wearing their numbers, debating the ups and downs, and making sure, as Dr. House said, arrogance has to be earned. It needs to be for real. They fluctuate in the manner of golf handicaps, but they will be printed in the program, not only for individual presentations, but also for the entire session. Well, this is about a 2.6. And so you have a sounder choice, so the spectator, the listener, can base this on a sounder choice. And you have the app here, as you would have this in the program. The speaker numbers will fluctuate, but also printed in the program, individual presentations, this would be in your convention program or in your app. This would be your app for the entire meeting, the Asshole Survival Guide. And this would print BAFA numbers of sessions, presenters, things of this type. This is an idea whose time has come. The BAFA numbers can, of course, be disputed or appealed with a high BAFA committee, who will grudgingly go through the motions of a real kangaroo court before routinely turning you down, in all cases, whatever, and admonishing you about the long memory of the committee and the hatred that it has of having its time wasted. So the motions of a hearing will be gone through if the BAFA number is questioned, but your chances are not good. Benjamin Disraeli said it. He was asked what an agreeable person was. He said, an agreeable person is a person that agrees with me. This is the position they take. And I believe also, a separate topic, that the meeting could derive a strong source of revenue by selling preferred seats outside the speaker ready room. When the speakers come, you've got to go down, sit at a small table, and the BAFA guy hands you your BAFA number. And these guys could sit in their preferred seats and prefer to watch you get handed your number. And the videos, I also think, that would be shot of this would have astronomical audience appeal, sell out like hotcakes. We have a win-win, What is the use of power if you can't make people do what they don't want to do? Once again, Disraeli. Here we have the people on the right getting shown. They're getting their BAFA number. They've come up to speak, and here their BAFA number is. There's huge audience appeal with this. Here we have various reactions, things like this. I think the selling seats for this would be a big seller. And also the videos of this for later on. There's the BAFA committee, but these seats would be sold something like a police interrogation room. The meeting would sell high-priced tickets to stand and watch people stand outside the speaker-ready room behind one-way mirrored glass and soundproof room and watch speakers be assigned their BAFA number. And I would expect these highly coveted spots to go for top dollar. You're not sympathizing. Meet the anti-emotional support dog. They've got emotional support dogs. This is more like the anti-emotional support dog Picture an emotional support dog. Well, this is the opposite of that. So there you go. It's hard to avoid a certain cynicism with this. Robert Benchley, when I was young, I was poor, but after years of hard work, I am no longer young. You've earned your BAFA number. The speaker ready room will have your name, your number on there. You'll be all set. You'll pick that up and you'll speak in there. And the idea is to watch the Kubler-Ross stages as the speakers are handed this. As you're watching the Kubler-Ross stages happen before your eyes, this will have an element of bocce ball, where you're trying to get it close but not too close. You want to see them go through the stages in that order: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Acceptance is not as fun, not as picturesque. So the idea is to get it close but not quite all the way there. So what you want, the ideal score is 4 out of 5. So this idea, those guys back in that soundproof room are waiting for bocce ball. They're hoping to see somebody go through the first 4 Kubler-Ross stages but not quite get to 5. That's the most satisfying. 3 is a hat trick, 4 is a grand slam, but 5 is not as good as an overrun. You've rounded home plate and you're heading for first again, and they throw you out, and you're out for being greedy and being an asshole. So here you are keeping score. You have overruns, you'd have ways to do this. You'd score it like a baseball game. Now, fair is fair. And a big attraction, I think, a big upside for speakers is that they, in turn, get to rate the individual audience, giving suggested BAFA numbers and adding comments in the manner of Uber drivers and their rides. So you would have, you have a blowback on that. Speakers can BAFA rate judges. They can BAFA rate crowds after a given talk. Seems only fair. And here we have comments from speakers: bunch of clowns, yahoos, discourteous buffoons, sad fuckers, sad bastards, not highly motivated. Correction needed. Oscar Wilde talking about the same thing, but not in the quantitative terms. The play was a great success, but the audience was a disaster. This would be a speaker rating. It's only fair. We have here Judge Bumgardner, Knox County, Tennessee, gave a famous ruling and was talking in the chambers one day and say, what I got here is a technical forensic science case, forensic type case, lots of science, and I got a jury that can't spell DNA, which I think is a really priceless comment, but there it is. The case of 0 needs to be gone over just quickly. That guy was kind of a nothing. The players who want to wear 0, the session's been kind of a nothing, double 0. Black holes are where God divided by 0. See, the idea with the BAFA number is you take what the speaker says and divide by that number. Black holes are where God divided by 0. You don't want to be in one. You don't want to be divided by the BAFA number. That's Stephen Wright's line: black holes are what happens when God divided by 0. Be extraordinarily careful. Be careful of which side of the event horizon you step on. Or, if you're close to that, you're going in there and you don't want to be there. Divide by that BAFA number. This is why no 0 or double 0 will be permitted. Evidently, they go into this shape in this memorable black hole type squid. I just wanted to get that picture in there for its spookiness. Once again, our team believes the BAFA number concept has a very good chance of catching on everywhere. And when the public sees its obvious usefulness and convenience, we have Mr. G. Reaper here, who plays for the dark side, and he's got his number right on there. You can't believe what he says. We think the general utility of this will be appeal to humanity everywhere. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Saban Report, please subscribe.